Okay, hey team. Welcome in, welcome back. Here's the chart of the moment for starting this recording. Thanks and shout out to all the people that have subscribed, watched, liked. That's very cool of you. It's very fun to see people are seeing what I'm making. And big shout out to the person that tipped me for the Reddit reading I gave. That was super solid, and I appreciate you very much. Okay, we are going to talk about the third quarter moon, which is happening in Leo today, November 11th, or maybe November 12th, depending on where you are in the world. This is very busy. There's a lot of conversations happening in the sky at the same time. So I don't know how long this is going to be because we're going to talk about all of them and how that might lead up into the upcoming Scorpio new moon, which is another very busy time with a lot of conversations happening simultaneously. And of course, there's going to be timestamps, and there's going to be links, and there's going to be horoscopes at the end. Okay, so here we're going to talk about the Leo third quarter or final quarter moon happening today or tomorrow. Here is the chart of the third quarter moon at 2004 Leo, and we're going to go through everything kind of piece by piece here, okay? So let's first get our basics on Leo and then get our bases on third quarter moon. That's not how you spell quarter. And then and then we'll carry on in detailing what is going on here because it maybe doesn't look that busy, but team, it's real busy. Okay, so what is Leo? What do we know about Leo? Leo is ruled by the sun. It's a fixed fire sign, and no other planet has exaltation here in Leo. So there is no like secondary ruler to be like, hey, if the sun's not available, can I ask permission of so and so to like be here or do my work here? No, it is the sun's place exclusively. So what does all that mean? Well, Sun is a hot, dry planet. Here we have some details on hot, dry. Sun has the energy to share from within. Sun is light, source, self. Sun is all. Sun can represent the body, health, and vitality within your chart. Sun is also how you shine. That can be a way that people describe the sun in the natal chart. That's how I describe it. This is how and where you shine based on the sign and the house and then all the aspects. Leo is fixed. So fixed builds what the cardinal sign started. So we don't have very much starting power, but we do have staying power in Leo. There's a rigidity and a fixation to fixed signs, a solidity, a depth. That depth gives them the time to get into stuff, which can lead to like an investigation, an investigative property, but also a stubborn property. And then Leo is also a fire sign. So fire is hot and dry. The dry quality is defined, discrete, solo, individual, barren, as opposed to the wet, which is fertile. And it's more like particle theory than wave theory. Dry is, what is it? Is it here or is it there? Is it yes or is it no? Don't give me all this wavery whatevers. Tell me what it is. And then in a personality, a dry is themselves. It is the self. It is the one. It's not the all. It's not everybody. It's not every memory. It's this moment. Heat or hot is an outgoing, exuding kind of quality. So it's sharing. It's already in the body to be expelled and to be shared. And thus it can be influencing because the hot quality absorbs into the cold quality and kind of energizes it so that the cold quality like meets a threshold limit or a threshold minimum of like activation energy and then can respond to the environment. The hot quality comes in and like kind of sets the tone of the environment because it's just out there. There's no hesitation. There are no, I don't know, linkages to go through. It's just there. And so it's also quick. It's a fast quality, whereas the cold quality is a slow quality. So from this, we can gather that fire details heat, energy, life, spirit, spark, like the spark of your life or the spark of your spirit, and movement. Fires need fuel, right? If you actually have a fire that you're tending, it needs to eat something. And they can be indiscriminate in what they use as fuel as long as it can burn, you know? Fires can be dangerous and get out of control. Fires can be small. Fires can be controlled. Fires can nurture if you nurture them, But you have to respect the fire. So what does that tell us about, the sun in Leo and the different things we may hear about Leos being show-offs or wanting the center stage or to be in the spotlight? Well, it's because they have a light to shine from within themselves, right? And there's no other ruler here. It's my stage. It's my spot to shine. And the sun rises every day. That's non-negotiable. That's a fixed fact of life, right? How does that inform our idea of fixed sun Leo altogether? So that's our basics on Leo. Now we're having the Leo third quarter or final quarter moon. This is the fourth moon phase in how we talk about the quarter moon phases. And so what does that mean? Well, in the new moon, we're starting something, we're setting intentions, something new is sprouting. It will sprout and grow and develop with or without you really having a whole bunch of hands on it until the first quarter phase, which is where we implement some kind of energy to get it growing, to get it going, or we decide to, hold our energy to ourselves and let that thing go on the trajectory that it's on, and we're developing like a more, internal use of our energy instead of an external. So it's not just always like going out and doing. Yes, you're building something, but there's a choice to be made at the square. Then at the full moon, we release all of this work, all that came up, how it went, how it didn't go. We have the fruition of the garden. This is, having an idea and developing it and then being on stage to present it. And now we're at the third quarter phase, where if you had a garden and you've harvested everything, it's time to clear the garden so that you can plant again next spring. Or again, the square is a choice. It's time to just leave it so that the garden can slowly retake itself, because you're not going to garden next year, you're going to do something else. If we're doing the stage metaphor, then at this point you've come off the stage, you're coming out of that trine, the lights of the stage are still in your eyes. And depending how long you've worked on this goal or this ambition, now it might be coming to a point of well, what now? If I don't have this goal to be focusing on, what am I? Who am I? If I've achieved that goal, or whatever, if that goal has not been achieved and that chance of that identity has been lost, well, now what? So this can be a mixed bag with the third quarter moon, because we're coming out of a really high energy, high bright, high light point, and we're going to be going into another dark point. And how you feel about that probably comes down to your natal moon phase. So if you have a natal moon that's growing in light, then maybe when light is shedding and being released from the moon, that's more uncomfortable. You get a little bit more anxious about well, what am I working towards? Working towards making space seems counterintuitive, because you're getting rid of stuff, or you're mowing stuff down. It doesn't really feel active so much as destructive, right? And if you have a darker moon, or a moon that's losing light in your chart, if you have a waning moon, anywhere from the full moon to the new moon, or including a new moon, then this might be a more comfortable time. Maybe you're more comfortable with releasing, and it's that build up that feels like, now I'm anxious because I'm going to be in the spotlight. Now I'm anxious because what if it doesn't work out? Well, what's past is past. Back to the drawing board. Maybe this is a more comfortable time for you. Generally speaking, the square is kind of, it can be considered a frictious time, because this is the angle that is of Mars's nature. So I have written here, release positivity, because it is my opinion, and this comes down to my moon phase as well, my natal phase, which is a balsamic, almost new moon. And so the full moon is ugh, really? Get this light out of my face, So the full moon has a lot of tension to me, but also the nature of the opposition, and the nature of, if you can look at my lunar basics video where I talk about kind of the gravity of the sun and the moon, the earth, and how that ties into coming to the self, to reflect on the self, and then releasing those parts of the self that are ready to go. So that theme of release, and then having the opposition, it's okay, let's release negativity, let's release the tension that's here, to let it go. And then at this point, if you're ready to work and you're ready to take stuff down and to make space for something new, why not release those things you're taking down and give them away? Share them. Share what you learned. That can be it as well. You don't need to keep these topics circling around in your mind, share it, get rid of it so that you can start a new cycle, you know? So overall, like if you have the positivity to share, it's like share it here. Don't put pressure on yourself to share it at the full moon. But release is a big a big theme here. The full moon is the release of surrender. Just let it, there's nothing you can do about it. Just let it go. The third quarter moon is the release of, you need to put some action in to release it. You have to untie something. You've got to go into the garden and pick up the trellis and turn over the garden and like pick up all the, I don't know, gnomes you've got out there so that you can have a new setup next time, right? This is going to require some work. Like if you are, the full moon when you're decluttering your house is releasing emotionally, like, yeah, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. And then the third quarter moon in decluttering your house is putting it in boxes and then getting it to the donation center, right? Okay. So now that we have some idea about what Leo, being like, I'm here to shine, like everyone is going to see me shining, but I'm here to shine for me because that's how I shine. So that's a Leo theme. And then we have our third quarter moon theme, which is getting rid of stuff, making space to shine, possibly. Making space, yeah, we'll leave it there. Making space to shine. So here's the very general overview. So this morning here, these are my times, and I'm in mountain time, so that's a -7 compared to whatever standard time, compared to the central time, universal. I don't know what I'm talking about. And so these time of days are just to like kind of get the beats of how things are moving. So already before I was recording this and while I was preparing for it, Jupiter was retrograde. Pretty much when I woke up, the station was happening. And as we can see from this slide, by the time the full or the third quarter moon is happening, Jupiter's already retrograde. So what's nice about AstroSeek, which is where I'm getting all of these images from, is that if Jupiter was still stationing, it would stay stationing, right? And now we are firmly retrograde. Now in degrees and minutes and seconds, which aren't shown here, Jupiter's tracking backwards instead of just hanging out at the same spot. So if you get notifications from an app saying like, this guy is retrograde, it may come a little bit earlier than where this site will say retrograde, because they'll include the first time he like gets into and stops on that very last like kind of permanent second, before he leaves it again. So I hope that made sense. But anyway, Jupiter's already retrograde. And then we have this full moon over the 11th or the 12th, so like 3/4 of a day later. And then in another like 16 or 17 hours, we have the Mercury-Mars conjunction here in Sagittarius. So this is a conversation that's happening right as this is happening. And then in a few days, Sun is going to make a grand water trine between Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn in Pisces, and Sun in Scorpio. Then the motions that the moon is making in that time, Sun will begin to make. So moon has like a whole entire conversation before Sun even gets to join the conversation. We'll get to that. But then what does that lead us into? That leads us into the Scorpio new moon, which includes the Mercury cazimi, like at the same time, like just very shortly after. And that's all nested in the Uranus-Neptune sextile. And then after that's done, after the Uranus-Neptune sextile is done, then Sun will first oppose Uranus and get into the conversation that Moon just had between now and then. Okay, so let's break that down a bit more. So let's just go over the chart so you know what I'm talking about. We've got the Sun at 20 and we've got the Moon at 20. Is there anybody else directly at like 20, 21, 19 degrees? No. So there isn't like a direct like third player or another voice in this conversation between Sun and Moon. So we're having a conversation about what to take down, what to make space for, so that we can shine, right? Because the focus we're going to have is on the Moon. The Sun's light is shining here onto the Moon in Leo. What do we want to shine? And then what's going to happen? Well, kind of at the same time, we're going to have this conjunction, so that's a separate conversation. Meanwhile, Moon is going to keep moving. First thing moon is going to do is quincunx. No, is trine. I think I have it in there as a quincunx. No, I have it here. Okay, so the first thing moon is going to do is trine Chiron at 23 degrees, and then move a little bit forward and semi-sextile and then quincunx Jupiter and Saturn. Now, if you don't use those aspects, then that means that moon has been trucking along, having these aspects, and then this is a blind spot where moon is like, I don't get to hear from Jupiter in my house, but I just talked to her. I was just in Cancer, that's okay. But I don't have to hear anything about from Saturn, right? So we're in this quiet zone where no one can reach moon. Or if you do use these aspects, then this is just another note in the story. It's another, note in the song. Then after that, moon will quincunx Neptune and then square Uranus. So of the active traditional aspects that we have, we've got this square to the sun, giving us our third quarter moon, and then we're going to trine Chiron, and then we're going to square Uranus. So if we ignore the Jupiter Saturn aspects, which may or may not be felt or present or like part of the conversation moon is having, we got to get rid of some stuff, and that's going to have a pain point, But once we have the bittersweet release of that pain point, and we understand it's for our better good or for our higher growth or just for some relief we've been seeking, then the square, the insight, the genius, the eureka of what we can do to build with that, Uranus and Taurus, that will come after. Then, because Uranus is right at 29, moon will like right away move right into Virgo, so there's very little void space right now. So there's very narrow amounts of time where it's like your actions will come to nothing if you're using the void of moon that way. And then moon will move into Virgo and square this conversation. Truckle on. Get on the south node, so another big theme of release. And then sextile and oppose Jupiter, Saturn. And then move over and oppose and trine Neptune, Uranus. So that's a very busy conversation. And then we'll move right into Libra. And again, these planets are at 29, so there's not going to be very much void space here. As soon as we move into Libra, we are applying to these conversations here. These guys will have moved apart. They'll have had their spat, and now they're going their separate ways. And Moon will be able to come into Libra. Maybe in Virgo we came in as Moon and we're like, hey, what are you doing over there? Break it up. And then they separated. And then in Libra, Mercury's going to be earlier in Sag. So when Moon goes into Libra, it might be like, hey, buddy, why don't you tell me what happened? And Mercury will be like, Mars bullied me and hurt me, or whatever. And then Moon will go a little bit further and be like, hey, Mars, why don't you tell me what happened? And then Mars will be like, oh, he just would not quit pestering me. I told him to leave me alone, or whatever, whatever's happening. And then we'll just kind of keep trucking around until we get, once we're in Libra, we're basically going into our new moon phase, right? Because the semi-sextile isn't a traditional aspect. The closer we get to the sun, the less moon you're going to be able to see in the very early morning. If you want to see the crescent moon or the moon here, you've got to go out pre-dawn and look more to the east, where the sun is going to come up, and then you might see the moon. So that window is going to narrow and narrow, and the time to which to see it is going to narrow until we can't anymore, until the moon is too close to the sun. And we're in new moon territory. And what will new moon territory be, but also the Cazimi, because Mercury will have come back into Scorpio, and these guys having their sextile. Meanwhile, Sun will also have had a trine between all these guys, okay? So that's very busy. I didn't even include, Moon's also talking to I don't know, Pluto and Venus, and I didn't include all those players. So it's a very busy time. And Moon's always talking to everybody, so that's not unusual. But I'm just wanting to break it down because this is notable, and this is notable, and this is also notable. So let's break down the Moon's path over just the first few days. This is Moon's conversation that she's having. So we start with Jupiter already being retrograde, and then we have the third quarter moon. Right after that, I've got square here and it should be a trine. So moon trines Chiron, and then we're going to semi-sextile and quincunx Saturn, and then quincunx Neptune, and then like 3 clock minutes later, Earth time, Mars conjoins Mercury. So I learned from Adam Gainsberg that Mars and Neptune are in story together, and hot damn if he isn't consistently correct in that. And then about 3 minutes after the Mars-Mercury conjunction, Moon will square Uranus. Now the Sun is at 20 degrees 50 minutes. So we have the third quarter moon at 20 degrees 4 minutes at about 10:30 p.m. November 11th my time. Then moon will keep trucking along, and at 23 degrees trine Chiron, at 25 degrees semi-sextile Jupiter and then quincunx Saturn, at 29 degrees quincunx Neptune, and then we have this 6 degree Sagittarius Mars Mercury conjunction with Mercury retrograde. And then like 3 minutes after that, moon will square Uranus. Now this is the first moon square Uranus contact since Uranus moved back into Taurus, so this might be bringing up some old Taurus stuff. And in all of that busyness, in all of that conversation that moon has had, in, this is 10:30 p.m. on November 11th, 4 p.m. November 12th, and then like 3 minutes later, so like how much time is that? 16 in like an 18-hour span. Moon talks to everybody and has this whole big conversation, and Sun moves not even a degree. So it's a lot. It's a lot of conversations happening at once that Moon is mediating or a part of or overhearing. I don't know. I can't tell you. And then November 13th at about 4 a.m., Moon will have moved into Virgo and will now square Mercury and Mars. So this conjunction happening in this conversation, now Moon is going to be a part of it and be like, I heard what you guys were doing. Tell me what's up, right? And that'll last for about an hour and 15 minutes because they'll have their conjunction. Mercury will move earlier, Mars will keep moving later. So Moon will first contact Mercury at about 4 a.m. and for about an hour and 15 minutes, like that contact will happen, and then Moon will be applying to the contact to the square with Mars. And then after about an hour and 15 minutes at maybe 5:15 a.m. November 13th my time, Moon has moved away from that conversation. The square between these two is over. Then, much later in the day, Moon will conjoin the South Node in Virgo. So that's another big theme of release and being tired. And then the following day, about 12 hours later on the 14th, Moon will sextile Sun. So that's the last traditional aspect that we have before the new moon. This is the last note, the last, passing of notes in class before the new moon is going to happen in Scorpio. So moon is having a very busy little chit chat here, all between really late in the evening, November 11th for me, to about the middle of the day, November 14th. So that's like 2 days. That's not even like 2 full days, I feel. The moon's just talking to everybody and doing everything and got our hands on everybody, talking to everybody. So then we go to November 14th, later in the day, moon is going to quincunx Chiron. So, whether you take that as a note or not, we trined. And then we move into the aversion. So moon going through the signs would have had like a conjunction, and then a semi-sextile would have been blind to Chiron. And then talk to them by sextile, talk to them by square, talk to them by trine. And now this is the other aversion. So whether you think quincunx means something, or whether you think that this is a moment for the moon to be like, at least I'm not talking to Chiron right now, that's still going to have a meaning, right? That's still going to show up. About 3 hours later, moon will then sextile Jupiter. So if we didn't have the semi-sextile quincunx conversation from Leo, now we're having it in the sextile and the opposition from Virgo. So at about 5 p.m. on November 14th, moon will talk to Jupiter by sextile. About a half hour later, moon will oppose Saturn, Virgo to Pisces. And then the next day, we're at 2 a.m., moon will finally oppose Neptune. About 20 minutes later, moon will trine Uranus. And then maybe a half hour after that, moon will finally move into Libra. Now this essentially is going to move us into like that, getting like that actually close to the new moon area. And then, maybe 8 hours, 7 hours after that, November 15th, for around 25 minutes, that's when the sun will finally come into that degree aspect with Chiron. Again, maybe you use the quincunx, and so they're going to have some kind of conversation with each other. Might be awkward. Or this is a blind aspect. So, like, Chiron is looking for the sun in the place of his exaltation. So, maybe at his job, and the sun is like, I don't want to talk to that guy right now. So, I'm in the swamp. I'm in Scorpio. You can't find me. I'm the exact blind spot with that degree, exact degree, aspect. I'm in the exact blind spot where Chiron can't find me. So, whichever way you use the versions. So, this is happening or not happening, however you look at it, while Moon is having like a final chit chat with sextile Mercury, and then we'll begin to have that sextile to Mars from Libra, and then Moon will move on. Mercury will move into Scorpio, and we'll be in a new cycle with the new moon. Okay, so that is just the moon's path from the new moon to what? Middle of the day, November 15th? There's a lot going on here, team, with this Mars Mercury thing happening as well. Oh, I guess I could have mapped all that out, right? So moon is here. We're going through, we're not squaring, we're trining Chiron. And then we're talking to or not Jupiter. And then we're talking to or not Saturn. And then we're talking to or not Neptune. And then these guys are having their whatever they're having, whatever that means. And then Sun has done nothing in that time. Then Moon will move into Virgo and will square first Mercury and then Mars, and then we'll move on and conjunct the south node, and then we'll move on and we'll sextile the sun, which is now going to be at about 22 degrees. Later in that same day, so this I think is for, yeah, this is for down here on the 15th, this chart. So later on that same day, Moon will then quincunx Chiron from 23 degrees, and then move forward and sextile 25 degree Jupiter and oppose 25 degree Saturn. And then right in the very early morning, my time, November 15th, will oppose Neptune. And then about 20 minutes later, trine Uranus. And then about a half hour later, get it into Libra. We'll truckle on for a few hours. At about 10 a.m. or about 7 hours after that, November 15th, that's when Sun will be in this exact degree that it's shared by Chiron, but quincunx not in traditional aspect. So either they're having something to say to each other in a very awkward way, or Sun is in the exact blind spot that Chiron cannot see. Chiron is in the exact blind spot that Sun cannot see. And that is happening while Moon is now in a position to, see this 3 degrees coming upon this 4 degree Mercury. Going to have this sextile and be like, hey buddy, why don't you tell me about what just happened? And then Mercury will be like, this is what happened. And then Moon will keep going and then be like, hey, Mercury just told me and I heard from Virgo what was going on. Why don't you tell me what happened, right? And that's all very busy. So that's what the moon is up to until the next new moon. And when we think about, right, so moon has last conversation with these guys right when Sun is first entering this first conversation with Chiron, or not, again. Because what's the first aspect that moon is making in this whole, conversation, in this whole script that moon is in? We're making a trine to Chiron. So the first time that Sun is going to be doing that is like 3 or 4 days away, depending on how you're doing the math, like 3 days away. And then Sun will start having these conversations over time with everybody, right? So on the 15th, Moon is here talking to these guys, and Sun is having this quincunx with Chiron. On the 17th is when Sun is going to trine Jupiter and then trine Saturn. 2 days later, on the 19th, this conversation that Moon was having between Neptune Uranus, now they're going to be talking to each other by sextile. That begins at 10 o'clock my time, 10 p.m. November 19th, and goes to 5 p.m. November 20th. So that's like 19 hours of them being in sextile together. So the sextile begins at 29:29 on 29 degrees 29 minutes at 10:15 p.m. my time, November 19th. And then about 2 hours after that, the Scorpio new moon will happen at 28:11. And then shortly after that, like within a a few hours, I think, the Mercury cazimi will happen, also in late Scorpio. And then the next evening is when these two will release from each other. Uranus will get into 2946 before Neptune gets into 2927. So they lose that they lose the ability to be at the same minute. And then once that's done, once that's over, then the next day, or like 10 hours later, no, 12 hours later. Oh my god, I'm so tired, you guys. And this is why. Like this, it's, if it's a tiring time, yep, you're aligned. Um, Once this is over and that's been released and they've had whatever talk they've got to have, that's when Sun will oppose Uranus and get that insight. So we're having this third quarter. Things have got to go. Things have got to change. Whether they worked or they didn't, whether we're proud of ourselves or we're not, it's time for a new cycle, and we've got to get ourselves into it. We've got to prepare. Meanwhile, Moon is aware that these guys are gonna have, like, they're coming into a conversation. They're having a conversation, and so Moon is part of it all. Giving her 2 cents or not, and then moves into a place where she's not talking to anybody anymore until she brings that information to the Sun. Meanwhile, Sun is just beginning to maybe have that conversation that Moon just had, or be aware that they weren't a part of it, while Moon is coming in to be like, listen to all the gossip I have about what is going on in the sky. These two are actually having their conversation. As soon as they're done and that's released, and Sun has also gotten the insight from Mercury about whatever this was, because we're going to have the new moon, information from the Sun, and then the cazimi, information from the conjunction. That's when Sun will get this Eureka insight, sudden action, whatever spasm that this opposition to Uranus is going to be. And then Sun will begin to go from an opposition to Uranus to a trine to Neptune. So this has been, Moon's path has been Neptune, Uranus, Chiron. It's actually been Chiron, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus. Whereas Sun is going to be Chiron, like question mark, Jupiter, Saturn, a newly reflected Uranus, and then a newly inspired Neptune. Okay, so I have a little blurb here because Sun is having a grand water trine with the day sect. And what I mean by that is, here's our planetary joy scheme. Mercury's at the helm, able to play with either team. He's cool, he's flexible. I saw a video that the astrology mods would not post on the Reddit, that's okay, about how Mercury is actually the closest planet to every planet, because Mercury is going around so quickly that it's like if you lived in the country and you were far away from everybody and your neighbors walked by every once in a while, but they're all slow, so like, it's regular but it's spaced out. Mercury's like the mailman, so like, who do you actually have the most contact with? Who sees you the most? Who are you the closest to actually in proximity because they're on your property the most, or they're closest to it compared to everybody else? Mercury, because he goes around and around and around. And so I think that may be why he has so much flexibility between the sects, because he knows everybody. He's everybody's friend. He literally is the mailman of of the cosmos. So the day sect are all the big planets that have something to do with like the way things are, the infrastructure, kind of like quote unquote the man. Sun is like God and authority. Saturn is infrastructure and time and tradition. Jupiter is institutions like governments, churches, and colleges and things like that. And then we have the night sect, which are the more personal planets. These are the things that describe personalities in people, right? We've got like mothers and fighters and lovers. We've got how people actually react to all of that, what their desires are, and how they want to move through and toward it. So Sun is going to be in a grand water trine with the day sect, whereas Moon is having these conversations with the night sect, and I'm going to get into more about that. So this final quarter moon in Leo is like the final hurrah for the last cycle, whatever cycle we're talking about. We're talking about the Libra new moon cycle, we're talking about the overall Leo gestation cycle, we're talking about Mercury's retrograde cycles. There's lots of things to talk about. So this is a final hurrah for the last cycle. So we're going to release won't serve in the next cycle, and that can include sharing, shedding, or freely giving stuff away. It doesn't have to be like a ho hum, my dreams are dead, time to put them away. It can be like, here's what I learned on that journey. Take it if you want it. And a new water cycle is starting. So I say a new water cycle is starting because the next thing we're moving into with the moon phases is a Scorpio new moon. So that's a water cycle. We're also Mercury, this is his last fire retrograde. He's been doing fire retrogrades for 2 years, and this year has been the beginning of the water retrogrades, and we're going to move into water retrogrades until 2027. So we'll go over that in a second. But also, Sun is having his grand trine. That's cool with these big day sect planets in water signs. So I feel like that's a new water cycle as well. What are we talking about here? And as far as a new cycle, I mean, these planets are retrograde. Jupiter's going to have the retrograde in Cancer and then move forward and get out. And the move forward and get out is fast. I feel like it's faster than the get in and slow down. And Saturn's here in Pisces, but for the last time. This is his last, again, final hurrah here. So yeah, it's a new cycle in water because we have this trine, and that's cool. But like, what I feel like with the day sect, what this means is that like the day sect has the higher infrastructure or like the man. And then again, the night sect has like the individual or the people. There's a generous flow, or because it's a grand trine, in, and I want to say stagnant connection. So the idea, now I am not into world politics, and I know that everything everywhere is super, super trash, and I'm not trying to make any kind of mundane prediction. But what the images I was getting, the ideas I was getting when I was seeing this and arranging it and making the PowerPoint was that it may look like some grand infrastructure plan, some grand plan that like the higher ups of our world are trying to implement, particularly about how we feel or about how we connect or about the limits on our connection because Saturn's involved, right? Trines is going to be a generous flow and Jupiter is going to expand that and speed it up. So I feel like there's this generous flow, which doesn't mean good and doesn't mean beneficial. It means like fast and quick and powerful and easy for them to do. An easy conversation for Sun, Saturn, and Jupiter, and whatever that means in our greater world in mundane astrology. They are having a conversation possibly about, you know, connection and the flow of connection and the stops that that's having. Because Jupiter is essentially still in the same degree. Jupiter's very close to the retrograde degree, and so moving slow. Saturn's slowing down to the same degree that Jupiter stationed retrograde at. Saturn's going to station direct at 2509. So these guys are slow. Water signs are slow. And so I've got this idea of like a standstill. So we're going to have some understanding here about a standstill, about connection. And maybe they're really happy about that. Maybe that's according to plan. But in reality is going to be hosted by the spirit of the people. And the reason I say that is because, yeah, we're ending this Leo cycle, but it's to begin a new one. If this is the third quarter moon in Leo, that means in the gestation cycle, we're coming into a new cycle next time. A new moon here in this range of Leo. And Mercury is now going to be coming in to do retrogrades over all the water signs. So, they may say what they want in the higher up infrastructure of the world, but Mercury's going to come in and be like, okay, well, espionage is my forte. Let me come in and make everything difficult for everyone in a minute, human, knowledgeable way you have no idea about. And then this Saturn-Neptune conjunction is going to happen in Aries, which is hosted by Mars, which is of the night sect, right? So, like, talk about what you want to talk about. The conjunctions where we have like true insight and are here in the now, those are happening all in here, hosted by Mars. And he's going to be there too at the same time. Or he's going to be seeing it from Aquarius, and then he's going to be here being like, listen. And then as well, Saturn and Neptune are moving into Aries. Uranus is only briefly back here in Taurus, is going to be in Gemini. And then Jupiter's going to be in Leo, while Pluto is here in Aquarius. So pretty soon all of the FARs are going to be in solar signs, in hot polarity signs. And so yeah, this water, this may be a new cycle with the grand water trine happening with the day sect planets, and they may have some grand plan that they're trying to implement and rush through with, I don't know, no oversight or no blockages or no obstacles or no delay, with the grand trine and Jupiter being there. Maybe lots of delay with the stations in Saturn and the slowness of water. But I mean, it's just a moment in time, because that water is going to sizzle and evaporate off the pan once everybody gets back into these hot signs. So that was just my little spiel about what what this inspired in me. Um, but yeah, we're starting a new fire cycle because this new third quarter Leo moon is leading to a new gestation here, a new gestation cycle. The Saturn Neptune conjunction is happening in Aries, and the Mercury Mars conjunction is happening in Sagittarius. So, like, what do you what do you want from me? Multiple cycles are happening all the time. Okay, so talking about the Mercury retrograde, I have a whole video on this. But really briefly, Mercury has been in fire retrogrades for 2 years, and so that would have been activating really specific whole sign houses for you, depending on your rising element. Doesn't matter what sign, it matters on the element. And so that might have been like an activation and an inspiration with the fire themes. And now Mercury is going to be moving into the water houses until 2027, having retrogrades in the water whole sign houses and activating these whole sign house themes based on your rising element. And so maybe that's like integrating and embodying this inspiration that was activated from the fire. So, for example, if you are a fire rising sign, that means that regardless of which fire rising sign, the fire Mercury retrogrades would have been happening in your 159 houses. And now that Mercury is going to be retrograding in the water houses, that's going to be pinging your 12, 8, 4 houses. So for fire signs, it's like maybe you had some new activation or inspiration with Mercury moving around in the fireplaces of like, who am I? What do I want? What does that mean to me? And now you're going to integrate it into like the more private parts of yourself, into your home life, like how you get into debts and transactions, whether that be financial or relational, and how you spend your time alone, like alone in your own head. How do you talk to yourself, right? Maybe that's the progression there. For earth signs, Mercury fire retrogrades have been happening in your 1248. So this, integrating or activations, maybe you had inspirations about like, this shit I do alone does not serve me. Or I need a lot more alone time to recover my fire and my spark and to feel the will to live. And so now you're going to start integrating that into your water houses, which for you are the 3, 7, 11 houses. So you have this activation and inspiration about your alone time and what that does for you. And now that you've done that work on your insides in your private life, in your personal life, now you're going to bring that into the social sphere, right? Who you are alone at home is really going to influence how you talk to your neighbors, what you expect of your partner to share with you, and like what you bring in for like debts and resources, including your emotional baggage from old relationships, is going to affect how you show up in relationship, right? How you speak about yourself and how you spend your alone time is going to have some kind of effect on like how you speak to other people, or if you want to leave that alone time, like what is that about? Air risings, the fire retrogrades were happening in your social houses, and so maybe you had some inspirations about what was working there or what could happen there, what could light you up in those places, and now you got to integrate that into like the work houses. So how do you support that? What do you show up to do now that you know that you want it? And what do you agree to like publicly be seen as doing, since you have these new aspirations and goals? How are you going to integrate it? How are you going to live it? Water houses, the fire retrogrades were happening in your 2, 6, 10. So maybe some inspirations about how you make money, what you do for work, how you show up every day, what you find yourself showing up to do every day. And now that is going to be, now that Mercury is going to be in your 159, that's going to come back into integrating into, okay, who am I? What do I want? What does that mean to me? Okay, so that is how that pieces together. There's a much longer version of that. Not very much longer, but I go over it a few times in some other video that I will have linked. We've got 2 more recaps, okay? So there's some notes on like the larger cycles at play. Let's go into the recap. So there's no other planets right at or around 20 degrees for the third quarter moon. But the moon is very busy over the next 2 days, and in that same time, the Mars-Mercury conjunction is happening. So Moon has an entire conversation before the Sun can even chime in. This conversation is the lead up to the next new moon, which is encased within the Uranus Neptune sextile and includes the Mercury cazimi in the Uranus Neptune sextile. And so overall, we could say that we've got like the bittersweet relief of release with third quarter and then immediately talking to Chiron by Trine. And then we get into Virgo and we have this little conversation. And Mercury doesn't do well in Sag and maybe hit a wall with Mars. And then Moon will hit the south node and begin to have this sextile with Jupiter in Cancer and the opposition with Saturn in Pisces, right? So here we're going to release, 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 and then with the opposition to Saturn, maybe some limiting dreams, right? Which is going to open a way for inspiration because then we have a square, or first the square, then the trine with Uranus for new dreams, new connections at the Scorpio new moon. And then I have that expanded out as well. So we've got pain points because of the Chiron contact of releasing old dreams, old goals, old people. Old dreams with the Saturn contact, old goals because of the moon, old people because these guys are personal and they're probably people hashing it out and having a talk. This is going to open the way for new inspiration, new genius, and newness because moon is going to square Uranus here. So like new eureka. Okay, and then another round of release and tears is because we hit the south node and then we're talking to Jupiter at the same time that we're talking to Saturn. So the release of the third quarter moon, the release of the Chiron contact, and then the release of south node and Saturn opposition together, right? Followed swiftly by an opposition to Neptune. So again, seeing what dreams are there and what aren't there, and then the trine to Uranus and getting the inspiration about it. Then the inspiration and the dreams themselves are going to have a conversation. Within that conversation, we come into a new cycle and the new moon cazimi. So maybe a profound drop of insight into what is starting. Then the sun or we will get that speed grow fertilizer. This conversation between dreams and inspiration itself will just shoot down onto us as that speed grow fertilizer, Uranus from Taurus. And then sun will trine Neptune and we will see the new dreams on the other side of all of this releasing that moon is going through. So if you can be easy with yourself over the next 5 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, it's probably going to be like from what I've typed up here, I'm assuming it to be like a very emotionally purgative time where a lot is going and you know it's good that it's going, but shit if it doesn't hurt while it's going. Oh my god. And it's okay that that hurts. All of that release of emotion will make space for new dreams, new possibilities you maybe didn't even think were possible, right? And it's going to take a little while for it all to piece together and to see it, but it's like trust the process kind of thing, right? Like don't hold on to it just because you don't know what's coming next. Let it go with the trust that there will be eureka moments, right? Okay, so on the monthly cycle, this third quarter moon is the last quarter phase of the monthly cycle that started October 21st with the Libra new moon. Then, a week later, we were building through the Aquarius first quarter moon, refining and working on whatever started with the Libra new moon. We released all that as best we were able last week with the Taurus full moon, and we were coasting off of those vibes because, you know, it is what it is. And now here we are, expending some kind of energy. We don't even know what for yet, but we're releasing what there is to release so that we can have a clean slate at the new moon. So just on the narrow monthly cycle, you know, what did you start, intend, or begin to hope for around the Libra new moon, October 21st, 2025, 2122, 2025? And then how can you like appreciate the journey since then? How can you release your expectations and whatever tools were involved? That includes identifying what tools you leaned on and like what you don't want to have in the next cycle. And now dreams, goals, circumstances come and go and sometimes shift beyond our control. So what parts of you shine and remain true to you throughout all that shifting? And what new light are you ready to nurture and reveal once you've made space through the third quarter phase, right? Now we can apply that same micro scale, monthly scale, into a longer 3-year gestation cycle, where instead of a week per phase, we have 9 months per phase. So this Leo third quarter moon is releasing something from a Leo full moon that we had right in this same area, 24 degree Leo, of February of this year. The fullness of this Leo moon, February 2025, is the fruition of the buildup and the activations we put in for the Leo first quarter moon in May of 2024, which itself is the growth from what was seeded and sprouting at the Leo new moon of August 2023. So, here's the charts for those. Here we have the Leo new moon, August 2023. We have a Leo first quarter moon with the sun in Taurus in May of 2024. We have the Leo full moon, February 2025, with the sun in Aquarius. And now we're having the Leo third quarter moon 2025 with sun in Scorpio. So in the gestation cycle, here we are in the releasing, the making space for the most of the cycle is come and gone. There's not so much to like quote unquote look forward to. So now we're just doing the cleanup chores. The dinner is made, the food has been eaten. You want to clean the kitchen, not because it's morally correct to clean the kitchen, but because you're going to be hungry again. And wouldn't it be nice to have a clean kitchen when you go to cook instead of having to do it at that time? But maybe you don't mind having to clean the kitchen next time and you would rather rest with a full belly now. Those are both choices to make, right? So we're releasing whatever it is we need to release and getting ready in whatever way for us. That means getting ready for us for a new cycle. So in this gestation cycle, which we're wrapping up now, what did you start, intend, or begin to hope for around August of 2023, particularly in the Leo parts of your chart? How can you appreciate the journey since then and release your expectations and the tools involved? What do you have to share in this long journey? This doesn't have to happen overnight. This is next 9 months. This is the beginning of maybe a few weeks into the 9-month period of the third quarter phase before we move into the new moon phase. So these next 9 months are dedicated to lovingly dismantling the tools and signposts that have been on your journey and dreaming about the light that you can shine in the new cycle. Yeah? Also, if this is a 3-year cycle, maybe you notice a pattern every 3 years, again in the themes and area of the Leo part of your chart, whatever house that is and whatever's going on with the sun in your chart. You can make it as complicated as you want. But according to this technique, every 3 years we may be in a release to make space kind of vibe as we are right now in a final quarter moon theme. And if so, can you identify a pattern? So this would be happening in the late Leo phase and in November-ish of this year, 2025, and 2022, and 2019, and 2016. And you can keep going back if you see a pattern so that you can identify the pattern that exists from your own lived experience without turning to the chart and looking to see, well, what should it mean? What should it mean? Go from the dates, and if there's an unambiguous pattern that you can notice, particularly around the themes of release, particularly around the themes of Leo, or more importantly, where Sun is in your chart, as those may come through. They may not, but they may come through more obviously. Then yeah, that's your pattern, regardless of what anybody on the internet says it should be. So now let's get into some horoscopes. So, for fixed signs, this lunation is happening angular for you. It's going to be in your 1, 4, 7, 10 houses. And so this is an angular horoscope, or you can just begin to replace the word angular in your mind. Angular means impactful. Yeah. So these may be the most impactful horoscopes for fixed signs, fixed rising signs, or people with very fixed heavy charts. So Leo risings, this Leo third quarter moon is happening in your first house. And so we may be making space for new dreams and insights into self, character principles, direction, and how you want to shine. For Taurus risings, this third quarter moon is happening in your fourth house. And so we are making space for new dreams and insights into home life, private life, ancestral work, and the safety to shine just for you, just in your home life, just for your family. Aquarius risings, this third quarter Leo moon is happening in your seventh house. And so we're going to be making space for new conversations about relationships, clientele, and how you shine in partnership. And Scorpio rising, so this third quarter Leo moon is happening in your 10th house. So we may be making space for conversations about career, leadership, public life, and how you want to shine in those roles. Okay, so the next most impactful horoscope may be the mutable horoscopes, as this Leo third quarter moon is happening in your cadent houses, which are tiring places. So you can say that cadent is tiring or draining. So these horoscopes may need more care, more time, more loving, more space, more compassion. And to understand that a big way through this may be to sleep it off. That's always my go-to. So for Virgo risings, this Leo third quarter moon is happening in your 12th house. So we may be making space for new conversations about self-care strategies and the light that shines just for you. So not just for you as in in the home space privately, but just for you. Like what's just when you were in isolation, what makes you feel like that's not a punishment, right? What makes you feel like, yeah, here's my stage. Gemini risings, this Leo third quarter moon is happening in your third house. So we may be making space for new communication skills and local socializing to let your voice shine. What do you have to take down from last goals, last patterns, last trajectories so that you can really let your voice shine? Oh, this should be sixth house. Pisces rising. This Virgo third quarter moon in Leo is happening in your sixth house. And so we may be making space for new conversations about health habits, routines, and what you show up for every day and how that helps you shine. If it's dimming your light, could you get rid of it? Sagittarius risings. This Leo third quarter moon is happening in your ninth house. And so we may be making space for new dreams and insights about the influence of both the foreign and the divine. What uplifts your spirit? And I say that because Leo in the ninth house for you means that the sun's joy, where sun will be like, oh yeah, this is my place to shine, regardless of sign, is going to be also his own house. And so, your interface with the divine and the foreign should really bring you a lot of joy. Has it been? Are you ready to make space for it to begin bringing you joy and uplifting your spirit and helping you feel like you're shining? And then finally, our cardinal horoscope. So if you have a cardinal sign, then that means this Leo lunation is happening in a succedent house or a supportive house. So this might have the most flow for anybody of the group. These horoscopes might have like an easy supportive quality to them where it's not big impactful like the events of my life story, and it's not draining and tiring and like when will this end. It maybe has a more positive tilt to it, maybe not, but that's what I'm gonna give it for being succedent horoscopes. So for Cancer risings, this Leo third quarter moon is happening in your second house, and we may be making space for new conversations about wealth and ideas of personal support. What fuel do you need to thrive? What kind of, hearth tending is there that supports you? For Aries rising, so this Leo third quarter moon is happening in your fifth house. So we're making space for new dreams and insights around your joy practices and creative pursuits. How are you ready to shine like joyfully? How are you ready to let that creativity out? I also say, how are you ready to shine? Because there's a connection between Leo and Aries as being Leo, the domicile of the sun, and Aries, the exaltation of the sun. So if there's any two places that the sun wants to shine and do its best and really be seen shining, it's the fifth house, or it's Aries and Leo, which for an Aries rising is going to be the first house of who you are and the fifth house of what do you enjoy doing. Are you ready to shine in that? Capricorn risings, this Leo third quarter moon is happening in your eighth house. And so we may be making space for new conversations around shared resources, places of debt, and transformation. Who's tending your hearth fire? Do you feel resourced? Are you resourcing anybody? What are the limits here? And then for Libra risings, this Leo third quarter moon is happening in your 11th house. And so we may be making space for new dreams and insights about your greater networks and aspirations. Do your dreams light you up? When you share your dreams with your circle, does that light you up? Do they gas you up? Or do they put you down? Can we McCang some space for a new story there? Okay. Thanks very much, team. I'm not going to put my little sad spiel at the end here. If you'd like to support me, I would appreciate that so much. If not, I hope you all rest up well and stay grounded and stay shining until the Scorpio new moon. Okay, thanks, team. Bye.